Welcome back. It is always a good day. When I wake up, I give thanks. And I know that today is a day that I am privileged to step out in my small studio in San Diego, California, and introduce you to another super cool human being. I want to say welcome back, but I also want to say welcome to all of the new people that are tuning in and downloading the show, because each week I'm getting more and more listeners. I think I'm up to 18 countries now. My top city is Houston. Thank you, Houston. Right behind Houston is New York, then Bristol, Connecticut, Sydney, Australia. I have Portland, Syracuse, Melbourne. Love you guys in Melbourne, Chicago, Minneapolis, and then San Diego, rounding out the top 10. I started this podcast as a way to kind of cope with my own deep grief. My mother, who is my best friend, passed in 2010, and distraught doesn't even begin to cover it. I didn't even know what grief was until my mother crossed over. So I started the podcast as a way to kind of park my feelings and explore more about death and about why we seem to be a little bit afraid of it. And so then when my big sister left the planet in 2016, I really kind of lost it and thought, okay, what am I doing here? So the podcast was born. Through the podcast, I have now developed my book with my mother. It is a book with her in spirit. She is in the next room. I believe we're here, and then we're just over there. And so she is my co-author. So thank you very much for finding me. Thank you for following me on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, pretty much everywhere. I do have a YouTube channel. We are starting to build out that. So we love that support as well. So thank you. And now I'm going to shut my trap after I introduce my guest, because we are going to have so much fun today. My guest is Jim McInnes. I like to call him Jimmy. I feel privileged to be able to call him Jimmy because he is a dear friend of mine. Jim is what I would describe as the closest thing you're going to get to radio royalty. I met him in the 90s. We worked at the legendary rock station, the KGB. I, of course, was just a little part-timer, still wet behind the ears. And Jim was Afternoon Drive. He was just this interesting person that would absolutely talk to the listener. He didn't talk down to you like a lot of kind of shock jocks or the rah, 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 you know. He would do this really highbrow, entertaining, smart humor, and he treated the listener as though they got it. They got him, they got what he was talking about, and they did. He is such an incredible person. He is a musician, he is a radio DJ, and my friend, Jim McInnes. Welcome to the next room.
It's a pleasure to be here, Jeanne.
Well, Jim,
I love listening to your the rundown of where your audience is. That's amazing. It's all over the world. I had
yeah,
no idea. That's way cool.
it is cool. I had no idea. I just logged on today because I always like to check and see where the shows registered, and Malawi came in, which is brand new. A couple downloads out of Malawi. Thank you for listening. Of course, we have your heritage. We've got Ireland in there too. Jim, you and I are friends, and we were always talking music, always talking radio. And then something occurred where we were able to kind of open up and get closer and really talk about the more important things in life, which are, you know, as I consider, what we do here while we're here on the planet with our kindness and our passion, and then what we do maybe when we leave here. Talk to me about your mom. I want to know the story right off the bat with your mother so that it really opens you up about our conversation with the next room.
Well, when my mother passed away in 1997, I was at her bedside, as was my brother. And we, said goodbye, Mom, bye-bye. And I came back here to this was in Illinois, and it was December, I'll never forget, it was December 8th, 1997, December 8th being the same day that John Lennon was assassinated in 1980. So that's how I never forget. Well, I would never forget anyway, but
Right.
December 8th, 1997. And my wife and I went on vacation in March of 98 to Ireland. And whilst we were in our hotel room in Dublin one morning, I was not asleep, but I wasn't really awake yet. My mother visited me and told me not to be afraid, that everything is fine. There's no reason to fear death. It's just, well, there's many euphemisms. I like yours, the next room, or the next cab to come along. John Lennon used to call it that. But whatever, and it was as real as I'm sitting here talking to you. I reached out to grab her, and of course I couldn't do that. And Sandi, my wife, said I was crying and just very emotional, and it was so real. Nothing like that had ever happened to me before or since, and I took it to heart, and I believed everything she said. My mother was always a spiritual person. She always talked about things like, I'm going to come and visit you when I die, Jimmy, and I believe in an afterlife and that sort of stuff. And that just brought it home to me. I've always kind of thought that way anyway, being a child of the 1960s and having been a college student in the 1960s, where we went off on some strange trips. And those strange trips taught me a lot. And then my meeting my mother just cemented my whole way of thinking about life and death and the whole thing. There's more than most people could ever imagine going on here than meets the eye. We're in school right now is the way I look at it.
I love that. That's a
Yeah.
great analogy that we're in,
Yeah.
we're these spiritual beings having this earthly earth
Yeah.
school or whatever. Um, Jim, when your mom, first of all, what is her name?
Her name was Jeanne.
All right,
Jeanne
it still
McInnes.
is. I just want to say welcome to Jeanne, because the way
Yeah.
that I believe, and when I prep for an interview, I literally open up my heart and I ask all those souls that have gone before us to join us. So I believe that she is here with us. So welcome to your mom.
Yeah.
When this happens, so you're with Sandi, you're in Dublin, your mother, which I believe there's a difference between a dream and a visitation. Dreams seem
Yeah.
to just kind of scatter. And then you're like, what was that? What was that? It was really cool. I was swimming with elephants, that kind of
Right.
thing.
Yeah.
And then a visitation, though, here it is, decades later, you are able to absolutely have total recall of that moment in time.
Sure. Yep.
So how did you process this as you're in a foreign country shortly after your mother died? What did you do? How did you just talk it out? Did
Well, it's
you?
interesting. As I said, I've always, I've done the psychedelic experience and
Sure.
realize that there's many levels to what we call reality. But my mother being there was so profound. It was so profound. It made the rest of my life since then, since early 1998, it's made my life so much easier, uncomplicated. I don't worry about anything for the most part. I forgot what your question was, but
No, just you're answering it like you
yeah,
just did,
I just roll with it, Jane. I'm here in the moment,
Mm.
and I've made my peace with all that is, and if my time comes during this conversation, that's fine. But whenever it comes, I'm fine with it.
Oh, that would be
There's
so
no
good
hurry,
for
of
my
course.
ratings. That would be great for my ratings.
Yeah,
Would you just go ahead and do that?
sure. Yeah,
No,
that's
no,
showbiz.
no, please do not leave me. I do not
Okay.
want a world without Jimmy McInnes in it.
Oh,
Okay,
shucks.
so wow, so she's
Good.
telling you there's nothing to fear. And isn't that beautiful? Because that is very, very similar with the message that I received from my mother as well. As a matter of fact, my mom would say, expand without fear. while we're here, learn all we can and stop being so afraid of
Yep.
everything. Like if you have a desire, go do it. For instance, like you with your rock band. I mean, you are a guitarist and a singer in this band called Shenanigans, and they play all over San Diego and very well and beloved to this town. Oh, yeah, you got your Shenanigans hat on. That's great.
Always. Yes.
I love that. Boy, how do you take this spiritual experience that you've had, and here you are, this rock and roll guy, and how did they blend? Or did you have, well, you didn't have any fear. What about communicating these feelings and these thoughts with those around you that are super close, like the guys in the band? Do you have these conversations with the boys in Shenanigans, or I should say
No, not
men?
really. No,
Okay.
we're nine completely different guys, you know. I don't know that I could sit down and talk spirituality with any of them, to be honest with you. But because that's all a whole different thing, you know. That's well, it ain't spiritual. Let's put it that way. This is a motley crew in the truest sense of the word of musicians. Some of us are far left wingers, some of us are far right wingers, but we all get along.
Sure.
That's the important part, you know.
Right.
We don't fraternize off the stage, but when we're on stage, we function as one giant noise making unit. So that's where that's at. I do talk about spiritual things with my wife, who's also very spiritual person. So we get along on that level as well as probably better than we do on the day to day level.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
but we've
She's
been
very,
married for 40 years, so you know, there's a lot
yeah.
of ups and downs in that period of time.
Yeah. She's,
Pardon my voice, by the way. I'm losing my voice right now.
oh, honey, that's okay.
Yeah.
You're doing just fine. And
Okay. Good.
your wife is extremely plugged in.
Yeah.
And music being a universal language, and I love that you said that. You got guys on the far left, you got guys on the far right, but you come together. And isn't that the way it should be? Isn't that the
Absolutely.
way that all of us
Yeah.
should be behaving, with kindness, compassion, understanding? To heck with tolerance. I want acceptance. Tolerance to me is like, I tolerate you
Yeah.
and your
Right.
crap. Where acceptance is, I accept you for who you are and how you're presenting on the planet in this moment in time. And I think that that's a very key factor. Don't be surprised, however. I had this thought that after this airs, and they will watch or listen, several of them, it may open up a whole new realm or a whole new conversation with someone that you didn't even expect to have that deep conversation with.
Oh yeah. It would be
You
nice
never,
to see my dad. He hasn't made an appearance. I think possibly because we were never we never discussed these sort of things. My dad was a combat veteran. He was in World War II. He was on the aircraft carrier, the USS Franklin, when it was bombed in 1945, and one of the bombs hit the munitions hold, whatever you call it, on an aircraft carrier, and blew up all the munitions and killed some, I don't know, just off the top of my head, I want to say there were 2,000 men on board, and 1,500 of them were killed in an instant. And my dad lived through that, obviously, and was severely wounded. And I think for the rest of his life, he carried what we couldn't define at the time as PTSD. He never would talk about the war. He never would talk about. He wasn't a religious guy. He would never talk about spirituality, or I never prodded him to talk about it. He just sort of kept quiet and watched golf on television and enjoyed his cocktails and his small circle of friends. But I would like to meet my father if he's in the other room, and I'm sure he is. Dad, you can come and knock on my door anytime you want. Just talk to mom as to how you do it.
I love that.
You
What was your dad's name?
His name was Mac. Arthur was his given name, but they called him Mac.
Mac.
Being a Mac, so many of us are called Mac just because nobody can remember our names.
Oh, that's
We
great.
Scottish and Irish people.
I love that. All right, Mac. You hear your son Jimmy is saying, "Come on and visit me. Come have a chat." I believe and this is me again, because this entire show is based on my belief systems. But I don't, anybody else that has something different, I'm open. I'm always curious and always learning. Um, I believe that they're with us all the time.
Yeah,
Your dad is probably said or saying now, like, hey, I'm there. I have showed up. It's just maybe that we're not aware or plugged in, or we're not receiving the signs that are coming in. Because I
that
think
could
that
be.
there's a myriad of ways for those in the next room to actually connect with us. And music is a big one. Like, my dad was a full on music man. I mean, I remember you were doing a show years ago, you on your podcast, and you were taking requests and you were playing really obscure, great stuff. And I was like, please play me Erskine Hawkins After Hours for
Oh
my dad.
yeah.
That was the name of his boat, was After Hours. The name of the house, it was Asher's After Hours. It was all about that. And shortly after Don crossed, Big Don, I was out here and I'm writing the next room and I'm sobbing because I'm writing his chapter about him dying, right? And I'm like crying and I'm typing away and I'm listening to Ludovico Einaudi, who is this wonderful Italian composer, and it's just beautiful music. It's very good for my senses when I'm writing. And all of a sudden, Jimmy, it just switched over to Anchors Away. And my dad was a World War II Navy guy. And I start laughing and crying through my tears because I'm like, oh, come on. That was my dad. That was 100% my dad. And being an electrician by trade, he knew that he could manipulate music, and he'll do that. He does it with quite a few of us in the family, as a matter of fact. So my dad communicating through music and through electronics. And my mom is a whole different kettle of fish as far as the connection goes. Wow, this is a good conversation. I just
No,
want to, yeah, I want to thank you because not everybody is willing to be honest and to truly open up because they're afraid of whatever ridicule. They're afraid that somebody's going to think they flipped their dome doily, as my mother was fond of saying. But I think when we get closer to understanding why we're here, we kind of just got to get rid of all that. That's fear, right?
yeah, yeah. We're here to learn stuff,
Yeah,
learn lessons. You know,
yeah,
that's why I say we're in school right now.
yeah. Well, good. Well, give me some Jimmy McInnes lessons if you don't mind.
Oh God.
Come on, you can do it.
Well, the main one is right here on my cup. As you can see, underneath there it says happens. See? Yeah. Well, so
Yes.
there you go.
Yeah. Well,
Fecal matter doth occur. Yes.
yes,
And it's all part of your learning experience
that's rather
in
zen of you.
school, the school of life.
Yeah.
So I'm just hoping I get good grades,
Yeah. Yeah. I
And
think you're,
I feel my mother's presence all the time. And when I was a little kid, even back to maybe being, God, I don't know, 8 or 10 years old, I remember talking with my mother and saying, Mom, I feel this presence with me all the time. I don't know whether you
mm,
want to call it a guardian angel or call it what you like, but it's been there for as long as I can recall. Somebody, something, I'm a part of something larger. And
mm.
this entity, thing, concept follows me every moment of my life. And I'm aware of it all the time as well. I maybe, let's call it God. Let's call it all that is, love. But I've always felt I've been looked after my entire life somehow.
Mm.
I feel blessed. I, I'm not in the best of health, but it doesn't bother me. I'm not afraid.
You still got a lot left in you. You got a lot left in that
I think
tank.
so.
Yeah, you do. You do. You just beat it back one last time there, the time before. Um, all of us, none of us really know. It's a matter of how and when, right? Because we're here and then we're going to be there.
Yeah,
And
it's inevitable. So stop
Right. And
worrying about
so, yeah, because it's so interesting. I have a friend that's going through a big challenge, quite a few friends, as a matter of fact, right now.
it.
And it is the nature of gently aging. Um, but the great thing is just, you got to get your groove on while you're here and have as much fun, because this is a very unique experience. We're not going to come through this way in this exact form. At least I don't think we are
No.
ever again. Um, we're going to do whatever it is we're going to do next, right? Uh,
Mhm.
so it is really, really key to not fear it. My dad was always fond of saying, quit smoking, walk across the street and get hit by a cigarette truck. And it was just, or no matter, one of his best ones was, no matter, there you go,
That's right.
no matter what a person died of, whenever my dad, like, he would call me, we were always on the phone, like lengthy hour conversations about deep topics. And
Oh,
um, he would, so say a buddy of his died, and he'd go, well, Uncle Funny finally, checked out, was dad's name for dying, which I love too. It's like, check, please. And I'd say, oh, wow, what did Uncle Funny die of? And he always said, shortness of breath. It didn't matter if the person had cancer. It didn't matter if it was a heart attack. It didn't matter if they tripped and fell down a flight of stairs. It was always shortness of breath. And
well, it does come down to that, doesn't it?
it certainly does.
Lack of breath, right?
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Well, that's cool. So we're in life school. I love that, the way that you described this presence, because the back of the neck and through all of that behind us, there is like, it's almost like a portal of energy. And so the way you described it is exactly how I have felt it as well.
Oh,
Uh, do you get the tingle? Do you get my pastor used to call it the Holy Spirit tingle. My
I
friend,
have on several occasions, yes.
yeah.
Or I've just been walking through a room and all of a sudden I just feel this tremendous outpouring of love and
Mm,
a calmness just out of the blue. It'll
mm,
pass after a few seconds and I'll go, I know what that was. Yeah, I know what
wow.
and
I'm getting,
that's
I'm
that
getting,
that is something that's only started happening in the past few years for me, or that I've been tuned in enough to notice it anyway.
yeah.
Yeah, it's just this overwhelming feeling of calm and
Mm,
and beauty, and I don't know, words escape me, but I know where it's coming from. Yeah,
wow. I love that. I want to circle back to your dad.
sure.
Uh, I just feel so much presence from your dad right now. It's really interesting to me. Um, if your dad were to reach out to you or send you a sign, what type of sign do you think he would use? Or what kind of energy? Would it be animal? Would it be coins, feathers,
That's
music?
that's a tough one. Boy. Uh, we never really knew our dad that well. Like I say, he was pretty bottled up.
Yeah. Hmm.
He never even talked about his experience in that event on the USS Franklin until he was like maybe a year before he died, and we had gotten him. Me and a friend, Jesse Bullitt, another radio guy here, who was a big time military. He was a big fan of airplanes. Let's put it that way. My dad was a pilot in World War II. And the only time he ever talked about it was after we'd plied him with a few shots of vodka and got to talking about the war. And finally, my dad said, yeah, well, I'll tell you, the worst thing I ever saw was my best friend splattered on the ceiling above me, or what was left of my best friend. And then he zipped up and he never talked about it again. And that
Wow.
was the only time, other than being when we were little kids, we'd say, Daddy, did you kill someone in the war? And he said, yeah, probably.
Right.
Go eat your breakfast.
Yeah.
So,
Well, think about that. What a traumatizing
oh
experience.
my God, yeah.
And
And he was only 25 years old.
right, it was just a kid. And
Yeah,
and back in the day where men were men, men didn't cry, I
right.
mean, that the greatest generation, right? Both of our
That's right.
fathers were in that era and both served in World War II. sound like my dad did a little bit more fun than your dad. I don't believe my dad ever saw his best friend splattered anywhere except probably in a bar face down, after he had been drinking a little
Smash.
too much. Exactly. In Cuba.
Oh, Cuba. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, my dad used to go back and forth. Boy, did he have great stories. Just amazing. I mean, hats off. There's still a handful of those World War II vets are still around.
Boy,
And
very few.
yeah, very few. I love going down to the Midway. They actually had a gentleman that was a World War II docent, and it was just extraordinary to hear the stories.
Yeah,
So
think about that. If you joined the army or whatever, the service in 1945 at 18, you would be 96 years old now. And that would
exactly.
make you the youngest veteran of World War II.
Wow.
96. So there's very few of them left. God bless them.
Yeah, no
Truly
kidding.
the great generation, the greatest generation.
I keep getting a vision of Mac or Arthur, sending a golf ball, you know. I
That
just
that,
feel like,
that
you
makes
know,
sense.
that randomly you're going to be out somewhere and it's either going to be by a curb or somebody's going to hand you one or so. I just feel like that's going to be a great way for him to reach out to you because that's what he was doing. That's what he was just kind of
That
quietly.
was his passion. Yeah.
Yeah. Did he play the game?
Oh yeah. He when he retired to Florida, he joined a country club, of course, to party and play golf. Oh,
Good
yeah,
for him.
yeah, he
What
played
about
it almost every day. Yeah.
how about your baby brother? Does he have any of this connection?
No,
Or,
I don't think so. Uh,
okay.
but he was there when our mother passed. He, but I don't think his name is Rick, and I don't know if Rick is deeply spiritual. No, he's going through a lot of physical and physical problems, mostly with his skeleton, bones.
Mm,
He's had 21 surgeries. Um, yeah, a lot, most of them orthopedic surgeries.
mm.
And he's just suffering right now through, it's just too long to explain. We should have him on here. It would be quite a contrast between the two of us.
You know, I think it would bring him some peace and some solace, though, if you were to share that story about your mom,
Oh,
because,
I have with him
oh,
many times.
good,
Oh, yeah,
good, good.
sure.
So just so he knows, because if he's having all these health challenges, the last thing you want him to do is to fear his.
Yeah, I've said to him several times, hasn't mom come to visit you yet? He said, no. But,
Interesting.
maybe he's too stoned to tell. I don't know.
Back to
I
your,
wouldn't know anything about that.
yeah, of course, of course. Um, Back to your mom for a second, too.
Hmm?
The fact that your mom was it Jean, Jean?
Jeanne.
Ah,
He was first generation Swedish American. Parents both off the boat from Sweden.
was it pronounced Jean or Janine?
Jean.
Jean.
Yeah,
Okay.
her maiden name is Jean Esther Eriksson.
Oh my,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah.
Svenska. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, I
Svenska
bet she.
flicka.
I bet she was gorgeous too. I just have this feeling.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Um.
That's where I
I
get my looks from.
yeah, exactly. I was just gonna say you got
I
your
do take
lectures.
after my mother. Yeah. My
Yeah,
brother takes after my father.
that's great.
Excuse me.
Yeah, because you are a good looker there, Jimmy.
Ah,
Um,
shucks.
I love that Jean talked to you all the time about visiting you.
Yeah,
Um,
among other things. Yeah.
yeah, like I,
'Cause,
but she opened up, she broke open,
oh
and
yeah,
that's
she
yeah,
basically raised us. Excuse me. She basically raised us. She did all the nurturing and all that. And dad was like, you know, go out and mow the lawn. Don't talk back. Blah blah blah. He was forever the commander.
right.
My mom was very deep. She read constantly, and was very spiritual. And she did go to church for a long time, but eventually gave up organized religion. You don't really need that in our book anyway.
No,
But
no,
she's a very spiritual person.
yeah, I think that that my dad would, he was always going to church too, of course. Um, and he would call me on Sunday and "Did you go to church?" And I'd say, "Nope." And I'd say, "Kingdom of heaven comes from within, Dad." And then he would just kind of chuckle and we would move on because he knew where his daughter's heart was. And my belief system was intact for what I feel is pure love. And that's just how I roll. Boy, that's so cool about your mom. I love, well, that gives me greater insight into how you are and that you're able to have this conversation with me today about the next room and about what is next.
Sure. Well, and as I mentioned the last time I talked to you, we both read the books by Jane Roberts,
Yes.
written through a medium or dictated through a medium. That are the book Seth Speaks, the nature of personal reality, the eternal validity of the soul. I read those books in the 70s, and I immediately said, "Yeah, this all makes perfect sense to me." And so I recommend those to your viewers. If they go out and search those books, you'll find it really open your mind up
It
to
won't. Yeah.
enormous possibilities that you never thought of before.
And isn't that fun to be curious to, for
Yeah.
me, a good day, which is every day, is learning something new. Like I am always pumped when I go, "Oh, I did not know that." Like I just love to learn new things. I am a super curious human being. And the Seth Speaks back in the day, boy, I was just a kid in Santa Barbara in the 80s getting turned on to it. And it was a little bit too much for me. I remember thinking at the time, like, oh, I don't know about this. This is
Right.
really, it's
Totally
very,
different. Yeah.
very deep, very heady for a kid who was raised going to church every single Sunday, Lutheran. Oh, you were Lutheran too. That's right.
Well, I was born in a Lutheran hospital in Detroit and christened as a Lutheran, but I never went to Lutheran church. I was
Yeah.
Presbyterian,
Yeah.
being a good Scottish boy,
Yeah. Yeah. Once a Lutheran, always a Lutheran. Or as we like to call it, Catholic light.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had a cool pastor. I remember just taking him to town on so many things. Because I was like questioning things as a young kid. I was questioning everything that I was being taught to believe a certain way. And I think that that's key and very important. Um, Jim, I have loved this conversation. Is there something we haven't touched on that maybe you thought you wanted to share with me today?
At this very second, I can't think of anything, Jane, but I'm sure that once we're done, something will pop in my head whilst I'm walking the dog.
Yeah,
But I'll
once you,
send it to you psychically.
oh, I like that. Well, you know what? You can come back on the show because I
Sure.
have thoroughly loved this conversation
Pleasure.
and I think it's really key. I don't get as many men coming on the show as I do women. And I think that's just the nature of women maybe being a little bit more not tuned in, but just open, I guess.
Sure.
And so I love to get men on the show with different perspectives. And really, what this whole show has been all about is opening a door to a conversation and to get us to think a little differently and to have those aha moments. Um, so what's next for you? You've got gigs coming up with the shenanigans.
Oh yeah, we're playing. This is Wednesday that we're speaking, and coming up on Saturday, my band will be playing an outdoor show down in the Mission Bay Jetty at a place called the Aquarius, and then on St. Patrick's Day, we're doing St. Patrick's Day evening, 7 to 9:30, at a place called Navajo Live, which is out in the San Carlos East East County Light,
Yeah,
near East County.
that's great.
So yeah, we
Yeah,
have a busy few days coming up here in my musical career.
yeah.
In fact, it's be 3 gigs in 9 days after not playing for 4 months. So
That's pretty great. What did I tell you when I saw you last? I said, "You got gigs to go play."
well, sure,
Yeah.
they just fall out of the sky.
I love that. What about radio? Are you
So,
doing, I know you're on podcasts. I know you've been talking to people. You still
well,
do
I have a,
your
I have
show,
a,
right?
I have a show that's broadcast every Friday night on a little peanut whistle radio station at the Pala, Upa and Pala Reservation Indians Reservation in North County, San Diego. That station is about 100 watts. I have a ham radio transmitter in my casita, my guest house, just as powerful as the transmitter of the radio station on which my show airs. But thanks to the internet, you can hear the show all over the country. And it's called REZ, R-E-Z Radio. That's the slogan for the station. And there's an app you can find at the Apple App Store or the Android App Store. And it's just called the Res Radio app. Yes, it does have the word app in the app name, the Res Radio app. You people can download that for free, and you can tune in my show every Friday night from 8 to 11 at Pacific time, Pacific Daylight Time now. Thank you very much. And if you're serious about giving it a listen and it isn't there exactly at 8, it'll be playing reggae music, which leads into my show. But oftentimes my show is anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes late in starting because I'm not there, and it's somebody else is doing the mechanical part of playing all the records and stuff. So it's
Yeah,
8-ish to 11
I
ish
like that. I
every
like the
Friday night.
ish.
Yes.
Um,
And it's also a podcast. All the shows are saved to mixcloud.com, which is a British based streaming service, which covers all the expenses of royalties and all that stuff
I love that.
in one flat fee. So I
Well,
have
good.
136 shows in the can. You can find them at Mixcloud by simply searching on Vinyl Resting Place with Jim McInnes.
I love it.
Yeah, there's
You
a
know
few
what?
shows named Vinyl Resting Place because it's hardly a really unique name. It's been used in a lot of record stores, and there are, like I say, many shows, radio shows with the same name because it's pretty obvious
Right.
name to use for playing records.
I love it's like a great name too. But I will
Mhm.
take all the links. I'll get the Res
Oh,
Radio link. I'll do the Vinyl Resting Place link. I will do the Shenanigans link, and I'll post everything down below in the show
okay.
notes on the podcast and also on the YouTube page. And then when I promote it on the Facebook page as well, so that anyone that's listening will know how to find you and how to
Thank you.
tune in and reach out to you, because people are curious. People are going to want to know more about your thought process and the experiences that you've had that you've shared with me today. So
Good.
thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank you. Thank you for opening up. And more importantly, thank you for being my friend and for trusting me with your story. I really do appreciate it, Jim.
My pleasure, Jane.
You have been listening to The Next Room with Jane Asher and Jimmy McInnes, or Jim McInnes, as most people like to call him. Please connect with him, download his shows. He's got 136, did you say? I think I
Yep.
took a note. 136 shows. It's Res Radio. There's an app, the Res Radio app, you can find. So please support him. And if you live anywhere in San Diego County, get out to see the Shenanigans. Although the shows he mentioned might already be past by the time this airs, that's okay. Just go follow them. Shenanigans have a Facebook page. You can see what they're up to. I actually have a refrigerator magnet with the Shenanigans. They are a whole lot of fun. There's a horn section. They just have fun. They get people out on the dance floor.
Yep.
It's just a really very fun and entertaining band. Thanks again to Jimmy McInnes being my guest today on The Next Room. If you can be anything on the planet, one request, please be kind. Thanks again for listening. These usually help.